For devlog number 4, we're discussing our design to dev pipeline, bringing still frames created in the design app Figma to life in engine, with that engine, of course, being Godot. Enjoy, and be sure to leave a comment if you'd like to keep the discussion going. Welcome to episode 4 of the devlog. This one is going to be a bit about translation of Figma designs into reality in engine. I am your host, Dominic. I design Haunted Heist, and I'm with ...
Jacob.
Hi, Jacob.
Program Haunted Heist, I suppose. That's me. Or
Yes.
What does it say? It says dev under my name, or something like that.
I believe it says dev.
That's what we've been doing.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't remember now. I thought it'd be cool. Like we did in the first episode, show a little bit of the pass off. Also, we're both like rolling with tablets that we can draw with. I figured we could use the novelty of that to do some annotation on some of the screens that I've been producing, or did produce over the course of the day, and you know it takes a bit more time to implement, so that's nice for me. But I guess like to level set a little bit, where we're at is just, you know, we built everything as an MVP for our original demo, and now there's an opportunity to take some time to really think about what makes an engaging UI sequence, overall user experience. How do we make it a bit more exciting than it might have been otherwise, and more usable than it might have been otherwise? So that's what I'm thinking about throughout this process. And Jacob, on the other hand, is working on implementation. And obviously we have discussions as it relates to design and implementation. So this is meant to be just a bit of a peek into that world, so that, you know, we're offering some transparency of what we're building, obviously, and that collaboration as well, because I don't know, it's fun to talk about it. It might be fun to listen to as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's our bread and butter, right? Like, this is the stuff that we really like doing, is collaborating on. I think we align on a general vision. You kind of do the heavy design portion and then show something like this to me, and then we can kind of work from there. I can start implementing an engine. We can tweak things as we go. I can talk about maybe like technical challenges that we might need to work around. And so this whole process of like really integrating the design and the implementation is really fun. And also, particularly with this stuff, it's exciting because with the new characters in, it's nice to also provide a little bit of a better experience so that those things are packaged together. Also, kind of from a technical perspective, I am taking this opportunity to kind of clean up the way that we've been doing things and make sure that our UI is something that is not going to be like a blocker for us in development going forward. The process of adding new outfits, new hats, whatever it is, into the game is going to be pretty much seamless from here on out with this redesign. So that's really nice for me from a programming perspective, I guess, because there's less sort of stress, I guess. Like, I don't have the stress of maintaining a system that was sort of cobbled together as an MVP. We've now sort of like reevaluated and said, this is exactly what we want it to look like and exactly what we needed to support from a technical perspective. So we can build it for that, build it for a good UX, and then basically it's not a problem for us going forward. It doesn't weigh us down. That's something that's super, super important in the development process, is like designing and architecting things in a way so that you don't kind of get in your own way and you can keep building.
Yeah. I'd be interested in, maybe just as a quick question, what are your thoughts on sort of the balance of building things in order to just get them in versus having that sort of, higher level approach of, let's make sure we get this right when we first build it so that there is less sort of revisionist work. I think it's an interesting question because scope always changes, and what you originally realized or thought you needed with a project is not always the same as what reality is asking for. It's a lot different from like architecture, for example, where you have to have like to the centimeter, to the millimeter, a planned out blueprint of a space that you then build. I think we have with game design have the luxury of iterating on the fly. And there's also just the process of our motivations in building something just for the sake of having something fun, and then realizing, oh, we can scale this, oh, we can make this into something that isn't originally what we were conceiving. So I don't know, I'm just interested in you providing some thoughts on what that, how we have to reconcile like the way in which we made this game as it relates to like what the best practice might be for this process.
I mean, I think that the way that we approached it was generally correct. I think, like, obviously, if I were to maybe build Haunted Heist again from scratch, like using the learnings that I have from like Godot specifically, just general game dev stuff and best practices, like I might, even while prototyping, build things a little bit differently to make sure that things are really flexible and I'm not committing to any one way of doing things, and I'm not creating manual work for myself if I want to extend it later. But that's always a part of my brain that's been going as we've been doing dev. Like an early example of that was the ability system in the game. Like it quickly became obvious to us that between tricksters and heisters, you basically have this set of abilities that you can use on cooldowns. You can generally have one ability equipped at a time, and that might affect your animation state in some way. So like there were all these shared components for that, and I built the ability system to be very general from the beginning, and I've continued to improve that. But that was something that even early on I was able to identify and say, like, I know this is going to be a huge problem for me if I don't design this to be like really lightweight and reusable. Mm-hmm. But for certain things like the UI, it's a bit different because, I mean, I guess like the reason that it has provided such a good opportunity to kind of like restructure things from the ground up is that the way that our characters work is so fundamentally different now that like the old UI and like the inner workings of it, it all basically just became obsolete. But not in a way that I view really as like throwaway work, because obviously it was there standing in our game until, I mean, I guess it still is because it's still in the demo right now. And I think it's important to be able to prototype something and get it to do what is good enough and not need to kind of over-engineer it. Because you can get into a place where if you over-engineer something to be kind of really generic and extensible and lightweight and reusable, you might end up like building something, like spending time building something for use cases that are never going to come to fruition. Like if I had done that for the previous characters, it would have been throwaway work to an extent, because these characters work very much differently. The way that we're swapping out character models and coloring their meshes and doing the hats, everything's completely different. So if I had set that level of sort of, lightweight reusability up in the old UI, it wouldn't have really been particularly helpful. Mm-hmm. Obviously, if in the demo, today we wanted to add a bunch more hats, like it would require a decent amount of manual work, and that would suck. But I think that was something that we kind of knew, like we just threw these hats in the game, we wanted some hats, and then we just kind of moved on, and we knew that later we could restructure things. So it requires some really, some decent decision making to recognize like when you should commit to something and when you shouldn't. Because I think it's totally okay to kind of like prototype something out that just works. But if you're planning on like having that be the backbone of your project and something that you continue to extend, for instance, like the ability system that I was referencing, then you do need to put that work in early, probably, because restructuring it later could be very painful. But for something like the character UI, that wasn't the case. And I think just early, like a month or two into the game, kind of put together the character UI in its like most basic form, and it was basically just working from there. I've tweaked things here and there as we've modified some stuff, but we prototyped that pretty quick, and I think that was done right. But it is really this trade-off system where you have to make sure you're just spending your time wisely. Don't over-engineer and like solution for something that might be in flux and just become useless, but also definitely do think really hard and engineer for things that you're going to be reusing. So I don't really have any regrets with the way that we've gone about implementing most things in this game. I think we just wanted to get to a demo basically, and then we're trying to restructure certain things. And yeah.
Yeah, and I think just to add, there's a luxury to us being small and lightweight, where some of those mistakes are, if you could consider any of it a mistake or like a lack of foresight, is something that it's okay for us to do. I would imagine for larger productions that, in terms of, I think there's a process of communication between like leadership and execution too, of like, we need this in the game to begin with, where it's almost like you have to take a sort of retroactive, or like a proactive approach to how you want to design a massive game, whereas we can sort of take a reactive approach of, we build something, it makes us think of new things, it makes us sort of build the project in a very organic way, which is something that I really value. It's sort of how I like to design, and to have things sort of, it's what I do at my day job as well. There's a process of just being like, okay, we've built this out. What does this inspire? Rather than being like, we have it all figured out. And I do think my assumption would be at bigger companies, there is that process of like, scope creep, scope cutting, timelines that are all affecting these things that, maybe halfway through the project, they need to add something that they didn't expect to add. This is why games of that nature can be sort of like nightmare productions, I think. And this is just me seeing it from an outside perspective and reading a couple Jason Schreier books about it. So I think that there's a luxury that we're working with for sure.
Yeah. Do we want to like kind of run through these high level designs in terms of like what we are redesigning here specifically, and then we can kind of talk about that a bit, and if we've got time, potentially show the sort of half-baked implementation of some of this in Engine.
Yeah, definitely. So I do have the pen. I'm just gonna proof of life it right now and do a squiggle right here. Okay, we're good. We're golden. It's here. And Jacob, if you want to annotate stuff on your own, like, please do. So I'm gonna start from the bottom and work my way up a bit here, but start with this splash screen, I guess you would call it, to start, or like, I don't know, main menu screen. I think right now when you start the game, it opens right up into the main menu, but I think it's interesting to me to provide a bit more presentation. So this is something that is done in, I think, my most notable, it happens in all sorts of games, but I think it's done best in the Super Smash Bros. Games. I think Ultimate, if we like threw Ultimate on the screen, that would be a great place to start, in which they have like a really flashy sort of like, it is a tone setter. It's a way to say, this is what you're getting into with this game from like a stylistic perspective. As usually as a person who's like very utilitarian with design, it's like, I want people to get to where they want to go right away. And sometimes I don't want presentation to get in the way of that sort of speed. I think that games that are sort of lethargic in how they, push the player through various sequences. I think like Rockstar games, for example, I think it works for them, but in the type of game that it is, but we're not that game. But the way in which the animations are super slow and like very human, and like you have to mash the A button or X button in order to run. Like, that's all stuff that I think I as a designer want to keep from a game like this. So all that to say, like, this is sort of my one concession here, where a main menu screen or like opening screen like this provides a bit of moment of presentation, a bit of moment of like stylization, and offers the ability to just like take a second and like understand what this game is from like a tonal perspective, and also to provide a little bit of extra information. You can see on the side here with the news. So so wanted to provide just this like big title here as a way to say, like, this is what the game is. We're gonna repeat this title later on, as a sort of way of cementing the fact that this game is Haunted Heist, and so we can see that in multiple instances. We're gonna do like a slow pan over this space here. So this is kind of meant to show a bit of motion, and I don't know, I like to think of like Valve games do a good job of this, of like they show various parts of the world that they've built in different different places, like as you play through a game. So if you go through Half-Life 2, for example, if you go through a certain level, like it'll start to show clips of that level as opposed to, you know, what it showed at the start. I think for us, you know, we have all these different rooms that we can work with. We can have the ability to just show different pockets of the mansion, and we can use that sort of dynamic camera tilt in order to do so. Right here, press basically anything. I do think that we are able to like add some personality with our text and stuff that like only you and I would say, and stuff that is different from what you're usually seeing as it relates to, you know, any other sort of AAA game. And so you're getting, you know, press start a lot of times, or like press any button to begin. Yeah. And so this provides a little bit of like our flavor to it.
A little less serious.
Exactly. And then over here, you know, this is sort of more just like quick and dirty. Like if there's stuff that we need to say about the game, this is the place to do it. I think there are some instances, or like with other games, in which you would have that like on the main menu. I think I was calling this the main menu. I don't really know the distinction. This is like a start menu. That's what I want to say. Start menu, main menu. So there's a world in which we move this, but I'm just like playing with the idea of potentially having it here for now. And so we can sort of use the next screen as like more like a different presentation. Okay, for our character screen, our main menu, I wanted to give the opportunity to open up some space here to provide a shot of the character, because these characters are like what's most important to our game. I think it's the personality, you know, it defines what we're doing with Haunted Heist for sure. And I wanted to have your username here too, just to show like we're not like there is a bit of a UI that's like making its way into the experience, and just as a way to connect you, the player, to your character, and just so you know like right away that's me, which, you know, maybe it takes away from the presentation a little bit, but I like the idea of like this is what other people are going to be seeing when they're looking at you in the game. And then for the most part, we're just moving a lot of this stuff just over to the side, but mostly keeping it the way that it is. I've seen menus in which there's like some more skeuomorphism as it relates to the ways in which you're interacting with buttons. Like Peak, for example, uses signposts. We talked about it a little bit in terms of like, are we using like different doors of the mansion or something like that, but I really like this like big, bold textual style that we've gone with. I've learned recently it's called Neobrutalism, and I'm like, we can heighten that as a piece of our style here, and saying like, okay, like this big, bold use of primary colors, big like deep outlines with shadows, that sort of thing is all helpful to giving us some more personality and putting our game's UI above the UI of others. Which, yeah, I think we should take advantage of. And then also there's this stuff here, which is like all character related interactions. So you have the ability to edit your character here, to swap it out from Trickster to Heister here, and then to enter a shop, which maybe that won't be necessary since we did a bit of a refactor with the shop. We can talk about that. So we'll see. And then a lot of the buttons, so I think that the way the buttons worked before is that there's a couple buttons here and a couple buttons here. Maybe they were stacking. I just wanted to get those all in one place. These are the secondary buttons. So you got credits and then your links to other stuff. They're serving a different purpose than the buttons here, which allows us to say, you know, that's secondary. We're going from pilled to squared buttons, and it's like, okay, this is standard stuff at this point. So, you know, not doing anything crazy here. Moving on to the faces, moving on to the character menu. We need this to be a lot more robust than it is right now. Right now, you just have up here the Heister and Trickster UI, like tab UI, as a way to navigate between those two characters. And you have, right now, it's like face, color, is it face and color is pretty much it. Oh, hat
and hats,
as well.
Yeah.
Face, color, hat. So we're adding more stuff. We're adding emotes. We're adding different body types. We're adding different outfits as well. So we needed to make this more robust. And what better way to do this than to just have more tabs? This is basically relying on convention. So if you go, let's say like Baldur's Gate, for example, or Skyrim or something like that, you have like your top level categories here. So it'll be like face, body, voice, personality, that kind of thing will be up here. And then you'll have the specifics of that there. So we'll say like nose, or maybe if it's like body shape, it'll be like face, nose, ears, jaw, whatever, that kind of thing. I don't know, kind of very broad strokes that I'm offering here. One thing that I'll say is we've since talked about getting rid of store here and kind of embedding the store within each one of these. It's like creating an arrow for me. So the store will kind of exist as part of this space here. And you've added since, Jacob, and we'll show this, like a bit of a gem, like your active gems, which we're using as currency. So the idea is that everything you've unlocked and what you've yet to unlock will exist in this space within each one of these tabs. And this is sort of the what I think of as like the easiest way to make this fairly navigable and clear. And for the most part, when I'm doing buttons like this with this kind of menu, I want to pair language with an icon. Icons usually are not very helpful on their own from a UX perspective, and so having both the language and the icon is really helpful. Another thing here, which Jacob, I think you'll show in your demonstration of the character menu, is we are making these faces and mouths move while you're actually talking in game, which I think is genius. And also, we're going to have, especially in this menu that I have here, the faces will be moving too, which I'm really excited about. So if you're talking, all of these faces will be animating, and I have never seen that in a game before, so I'm very excited to have that be part of our game. And this last piece is pretty quick, pretty simple. Just showing once a game starts, having that start screen have a little bit more energy and excitement to it. So, like, kind of stylizing it. So we'll start here with Heisters up at the top, where you have this like big kind of like title card. I think about it like if you've ever watched, I mean, a ton of movies do this. Games do it as well, but I think like it sort of thrives in the movie format, where you have this like, I think like Endgame, in Infinity War, like the Marvel movies do a good job with their like title cards for different locations. So they'll do like their location plus a year. So you immediately, like, it's a little bit of text. Like sometimes you prefer things to be completely contextual, but I think with this it's like, who cares? Like we'll do the written contextualization that we need to do, but we can offer with this screen some more personality and like dynamism as it relates to the camera and the characters and their emotes. So each person, if they have like an emote that is their sort of main emote, they can like have that sort of go off as the screen is happening. And I'd like to ideally have a sort of moving dynamic camera throughout this. So the idea is you start here with Heisters, and then you back out, and it goes through the mansion from the safe room into the corridor. So you get the dynamic camera sort of moving as this versus word pops up, and then you kind of find the tricksters hiding in the shadows. So this, as opposed to our current screen, which we can show, which is just like a head-to-head, and everyone's just kind of standing there, this makes it more of like a, you know, here's what we're going to be doing, here's like the personality of all the characters, here's a bit of like a style that we're bringing to this interaction, which I'm very excited to show off. So that's it for me. I can pass it off to you.
Cool. Yeah, I'm really excited about this being different. I think today we kind of refer to it as like the lineup before the match. I think it has like personality today, but it can be really jank, and it just involves like the camera panning out and like everybody trying to be squashed into the same kind of area so that you can see everyone. I think this will be a really fun pairing with the emotes too, like you said. Yeah, so This is kind of a first look at what the new character menu is going to look like. So here, you can see some of the styles are not actually finished yet. If you compare them to the designs where you kind of have these, you can see this like inverted color when something is selected. So this is still in progress, but it's pretty much fully functional. So the idea is that whether you're Heister or Trickster, you kind of have a persistent view of these tabs here. And they may or may not become disabled if they don't apply for either your particular character or your particular outfit. Like right now, the Trickster has no hats configured. We're still maybe kind of figuring out what that looks like in terms of if there might even be hats for the Trickster. But yeah, it's like if we click through here, you can just dynamically see all these different outfits. Look at those pecs.
Oh my gosh.
Those pecs jiggle. So you can click through here. Before, this would be everything that you see here would be in one long scroll. And also we have yet to sort of add in certain stuff like all the faces and all the hats. We just have a few prototypes in. But yeah, so we've got 5 outfits that you can select through right now. These are, in flight. Some of these might be unlockable. Some of them might not even be in the game. But these are like MVP outfits to prove that we can, on the fly, swap these meshes out on the same skeleton, basically. So that's effectively what an outfit is just a different mesh on top of the skeleton, which is like super, super powerful. And the body is basically just your color, except one thing that you can also do is we're planning on having, for certain outfits, the ability to also have this shape. So this kind of is a shape slider for the body to look kind of a little bit more, if you want to call this masculine and this feminine. I don't know if this was what I would say is the picture of masculinity, but and there's even this feet slider, which is a little disturbing.
And that goes for Tricksters too, right?
Yes. Yeah. So we'll have maybe some more of these that are dependent on the type of outfit you have. So like, for instance, this guy just sort of looks the way he does and doesn't have those sliders. This is still something that I think we're actively like designing and haven't put that much thought into, but just kind of wanted to put it in there as a proof of concept to add that extra level of like dynamism to controlling how your character looks and feels. So the colors are just the same as they've always been, but they have their own dedicated space here as well. The faces, as you were saying, as I'm speaking, they all speak, which is really cool. So you actually get to see what your character is going to look like when they speak, which I think is really interesting and adds a little bit of personality. Because, for instance, with this guy, he speaks in a very different way than this character, right? You could see his little tongue or something like that in his mouth as he's speaking. So it gives that a little bit more of the personality of the character, and you'll also have them blinking, which I think when there's a big grid of faces is going to be a little bit disturbing and funny. Yeah, we've got the hats now as well, which we will be adding.
We'll definitely show off the wizard hat because it bounces.
We're going to be able to do things like this now too, where there's some physics involved. We can basically add these like jiggle bones to the hat, and he's got jiggle bones in his chest too, which is why
oh my god,
bouncing around like that.
We're gonna get an adult rating over that. That's crazy.
So
those
if we pop over to Trickster, it's pretty similar. We can click through and see all these different things. This is actually a cool demonstration of the outfit system too, though, is you can actually see the Trickster's heart beating in his chest with this outfit. So because of the way the system works, we basically just have this skeleton and these are all meshes on top of it, but you can even, just like add extra, this is actually the same sort of thing where there's a jiggle bone attached to like his chest. And so his heart is kind of moving around when you shake him. But it can also be animating on its own. So this is cool because like we've kind of built the system to be able to do stuff like this. Like we built this outfit in particular and this outfit in particular to be able to demonstrate the capability to do these things so that we're basically unblocked going forward. And we don't need to do a whole lot more technical solutioning. We can just kind of get creative with it. So even here, you can see this skeleton's mouth, his jaw is unhinging as I'm speaking. So instead of, the traditional 2D sort of face that's animating in this way, we can also support speaking in a kind of more I don't know, three-dimensional way, which is really neat. And you can see here that these tabs are disabled for the skeleton because we're basically saying the skeleton is the skeleton. That's the way he looks. You can't configure his body or his face or a hat. This is just the skeleton. But for something like the default skin, you get some level of customization.
Love it.
So yeah, this is basically a fully functioning version of these original designs over here. I guess one thing to add is that you referred to these currencies in the top left here. This is like super work in progress. It's just kind of thrown up on the screen as a demonstration. But the idea is that you'll basically have maybe a heister based currency and a trickster currency to spend to unlock things that will be in this grid, like extra skins that you have not yet unlocked. So those are basically just thrown up on screen to get that point across for now. But yeah, I mean, that's basically the first look at it. I think that this is fairly functional. We just have a bit more stylizing to do. But it'll be really exciting to get all the faces in game, all the hats back in the game. And from there on, like I said, we've kind of built this to try to look ahead and say, what are we going to want out of faces, out of hats, out of the outfits, and build for that. And so now when we add anything new, it should be as easy as just putting those models into the game and not needing to make very many code changes at all, which is this thing that is kind of the most friction. Like now I guess the pipeline ideally can be you, me, and Micah talking about certain outfits or hats that we would want in the game, and Micah can just on his own be enabled to create these things and put them in the game without me needing to even be involved to do anything to support that, which is really cool.
Yeah, it's great to see this system start to find some robustness, and I don't know, I think as a first pass it's really well done work, and we're setting ourselves up very solidly. So thanks for sharing it.
Yeah, I guess we don't have the emotes tab here yet. That'll be something to
we'll
add,
get there.
But let me.
You're just gonna pop one right here. Boom. Nice.
Yeah, just slam it back.
Boom.
No big deal.
All right. Well, on that note, we're at time here. Thank you, Jacob. Appreciate the showcase into what we're working on, and fun to show off this pass off. I think it's something we've been doing for the last 5 years almost, working from Figma to code or engine, and it's nice to for the most part have that be like fairly seamless. And so my advice is to link up with a guy who gets it like this guy does.
Yeah, it's fun to showcase this stuff. I hope that people find it interesting, because it's like, this is, like I said, the bread and butter of our sort of creative collaboration, is to be able to do things like this and execute on them so quickly. Like this truly was, over the span, like sort of asynchronously over a week or so, so it can happen really, really quick.
Yeah, definitely. All right, man. Thanks for hopping on. We will see you viewers next week with whatever we decide to talk about.
Cool. All right.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
See ya.